So here's the truth. We were supposed to have somebody else on the program.
No, don't mention his name, because we're going to get him on.
You keep saying that. How many times has he pulled the shoot on us?
Well,
3, 4. You keep putting every time there's a lineup come out, his name is on the lineup.
I know.
And Hugh and I, our technical director and I, always roll our eyes and say, "Oh yeah, sure."
Okay. Well, when he comes on, we're going to grill him. You know.
Well, I don't think he's ever coming on. I think he's
coming
playing
on
with you.
He's coming on.
Yeah, that's what you keep saying. I'm not getting any younger. I could die before he comes on.
Maybe what if he's on what if he's on Tuesday?
Well, I might be dead by Tuesday.
Okay.
You don't know that. Why don't we get his boss on and give his boss crap for him not coming on? What did we do to him?
I don't know.
He's been on before.
We're going to ask him when he comes on.
We didn't treat him like crap, did we?
No, he said he'd love to come on anytime.
Well, what the name of the baby Jesus is the problem then?
I know. We'll solve that next week.
Anyway, so we had to enlist
our go-to list. It's our go-to list.
No, we have to get a replacement player.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when they have those strikes and they bring in all the guys from nowhere.
Or Alliston, depending on.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So fortuitously, we have a guy in the wings all the time who we love to talk to, and I think you guys like to listen to him. And he really needs no introduction. I see there's thousands of people right now going, who is it? They're trying to guess.
Yeah.
Well, you won't be disappointed. The former program director of The Fan in Toronto, Nelson Millman, will join us once again.
Should be in the Broadcasters Hall of Fame. You know, he really should be.
100%.
Yeah.
100.
Even though I know he's a dear friend of both of ours, but he should be in whatever Hall of Fame is in for broadcasting in our country. Nelson should be in it.
You ain't getting an argument from me, pal. Nelly Belly, when we come back after these messages. It's McCown and Shannon back on the program for this Thursday. Our guest today is a person who needs no introduction if you've followed our miserable little careers over the years. He likes to call himself Phil In, but it's actually Nelson Millman, the former program director of The Fan.
The producer tells me that he's on that list on the left side of the desk that says, when in doubt, go to Nelson. Because Nelson will always have good stories.
Well, when I get a note, at 11 o'clock at night that says, "Can you do me a favor?"
That's right.
And I made the mistake of saying, "Sure, anything like John, all the time."
I didn't ask
before you
for
knew what the favor was.
I didn't ask for money.
You buried the lead on me, Shannon.
I just didn't ask for money. That's the key.
Well, hopefully you'll tell some stories that'll be moderately interesting. And even more importantly, ones that I haven't heard already, but I doubt that's the case.
Yeah, right back at you, pal.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Oh,
after all the years that you and I spent together. But
I want to know who had their feet up on the desk more.
That'd be me.
Well, my feet were on the desk if I was in there alone, and as soon as Bob came in, I left them up there because but I just had to make room for his.
That's right.
And if anybody else, I'll tell you what, if anybody else had tried to put their feet on my desk, sorry about that. There would have been a bit of a discussion.
Oh, yeah.
But it was Bob. When I got the bigger office, it was easier because he was on the other side of the room on the couch.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Like, I am a feet up on the coffee table kind of guy all the time. And here's the truth. Before we started doing TV, before the show was simulcast on television, and we were in the old studio, which was this tiny little box.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the desk was configured and the way the microphone moved, I could actually put my feet up and on the desk and pull the microphone towards me. And I many times did the show in a reclined position with my feet propped up on the desk. Actually,
I believe you refined that move the years you were doing the show from Vegas.
Well,
I saw the setup down there.
Vegas was always feet up on the desk.
Yeah.
And then somebody had the brilliant idea to put this stupid show on television, and that was the end of that. Although
the old stupid show or this stupid show?
No, the other stupid show.
Oh, okay.
Although the minute a commercial break hit, I was doing one of two things. Either I was downstairs having a cigarette, or I was sitting in the studio with my feet up on the desk.
Mhm.
And then and the rest of us were in the elevator lobby punching buttons to make sure that it didn't get back on time. So
Well, that happened a couple times.
Yeah, the worst one was you were caught in the elevator and Stephen Brunt was your co-host. And the last thing Stephen Brunt ever wanted to do was sit in the one chair.
Oh, I know.
That was just something you know what, God bless him, great writer, great broadcaster, but he did not ever want to sit in the one chair and come back from a break. And the day he was forced to, I'm not sure that he didn't leave a little wet spot there when he had to, because Bob was stuck in the elevator. Where's Bob? I don't know. I mean, he's still got 15 seconds. I'm sure he'll be back.
I didn't make it.
No, he didn't make it.
No, the elevator literally broke. And first I had to find the stairs because I'd never used them. I didn't know where they were.
And it was 5 floors up.
And it was 5 floors up. Yeah. So, and then I get in there and of course,
Well, I think whoever was on the board producing probably ran out of commercials to play, waiting for you.
And now this would be at 5 o'clock local time.
5 or 6, yeah.
Yeah, and you would be at home by now, Nelson, or you'd be in your office still. Where would you be?
No, usually by then I'm on about the 16th hole.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, I happen to actually be in the building. For some reason.
For some reason.
What? Hoping to be a fill-in guest, or yeah.
Yeah, you're always hoping for that. So yeah, but I saw you a lot with your feet up on the desk, and other guys did it too. And when we were doing music radio way back when, it was the same thing.
Sure.
The music's on, you get all your next stuff lined up, ready to go, and feet go up on the desk, and you fire up a butt.
So at some point in time, I labeled you as the idiot program director.
Yes.
Do you have any recollection of that?
Of being called the idiot program director?
No, well, of the whole evolution of that. And, I used to get asked, isn't Nelson mad that you call him that? And I said, no, he's my pal. And he knows it's done in jest, and I'm not being serious about it. But you kind of took that as a badge of honor somehow.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, yes, a badge of honor. Part of it was, you had how many ever hundreds of thousands of people listening in their car coming home. I may have exaggerated that. And at the end of the day, they all, not all of them, but most of them probably didn't like their boss. And it gave you another connection to the audience that you could go on the air and rip me a new one. It's showbiz. We were in showbiz, and it kind of came with the territory. It never offended me. It was just part of the act, as far as I was concerned. And we're in showbiz. You got to put on a show.
But there really were at that point 2 sets of rules: a set of rules for Bob, and then a set of rules for everybody else. Correct?
No.
You don't think so?
The rules may have been a little different with Bob, but that came down to the relationship we had, the kind of show he did, what his character was, and which at the end of the day is not that much different than real Bob, but with a much sharper edge. But the other guys, the morning show, they'd all rip me. Marsden was on me all the time. It's part of the show. So if it's another way for people who are in their cars or listening at wherever they are, to emotionally bond with the host, that's how you build audience. That's how you build listener habit. So it was never, it was never personal. I never took it personally. And frankly, I didn't care. What are the ratings, and are we making any money?
Did you ever get mad? I mean, at me or at something I said or a reference that I made?
Off air or on air?
No, well, on air particularly. I think the audience really is more.
Yeah,
interesting than
I
on-air
think, you know,
personality.
there were probably times where I was frustrated perhaps with direction you took versus direction I thought we should go with some of the guest choices. You know, not huge things. I wouldn't say I was ever mad, but I think part of building a show is being able to look at it and say that, you know, okay, that worked, that didn't work. And we always talked about it. You know me. If I thought
Oh, yeah.
something didn't work, we talked about it. Did you get mad at me? Did I get mad at you? Mostly just during negotiations.
No, always during negotiations, occasionally, other times, but shockingly not many.
No, you know what, as I look back and it's been a few years, no, you know, and the memory tends to remember good things, not those kind of things anyways. But I could never hold a grudge with anybody because, as I said, it was all part of the act, and we've all got flaws, and you know, none of us are perfect, and if we can't accept each other's with flaws, then we're never gonna get along. Did I get frustrated? Yeah, sometimes with you would dig your heels in and I would dig my heels in.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I came back to, with the experience that we had on the radio, you know, 90% of the time, if the host or the producer was making a call, I'd say, okay, fine, that's, you know, that's your job. Now to make it pay off.
Well, actually, you touched on something about whether you did or didn't like a guest or a way the conversation was going. How patient could you be, or how patient were you? Not necessarily in the short term of a single program, but over a period of time to say, okay, listen, I didn't like it then, I don't like it now, or I did like it then, I didn't like it then, and I like it now. Was there a time frame you always allowed yourself to make those decisions?
You know, that, John, that was probably more of an emotional decision. As you talk about things, you know, that job is a bit like being a coach. At some point, somebody's got to take the step back, look at it from top down and say, don't do that some more. Not everything works. And, you know, I think the people that make advances are the ones that can accept that feedback. It was never about my ego. I tried not to make it about my ego, but it was about what's the best thing for the radio station, what's the best thing for the audience. And of course, you're going to have differences of opinion. Bob's going to come at it from one perspective. I'm going to come at it from another. John, you know, you dealt with enough great broadcasters to know that sometimes those guys dig their heels in. Those guys, and I'm pointing at Bob, but as often as not, you know, maybe they were right.
Well, if you're talking about management styles, I was taught this a long time ago, that if you didn't like the way things were going, you had to challenge the people to make with their own ideas, and make it look like it was their idea, not yours.
I would never say that in front of Bob.
Too late. I don't give a crap what you say anymore.
No, I know. But yeah,
I didn't care that much when we were working together, but I care even less now. You understand?
No, I get that. I get that completely.
Okay.
But there were times, and I'll use Bob as the example because we're sitting here talking about him.
Is he in the room?
No, we're not.
Surprisingly. You know, if I needed Bob to do something, I had an approach to get him from where I knew he would start to where I needed him to finish.
Because if you walked in and said, Bob, don't do this, the first thing he does on the air is saying, I've been told I'm not supposed to do this. Am I right?
I found that out early on.
Yeah.
We never did that again. So, but everybody responds differently to advice, stimulus, feedback. And the key to being, you know, what I hope I was a good manager, was to figure out what turned people's cranks and how to get them motivated and how to get them to understand what I was trying to, you know, what I was trying to do.
Well, and I'm not saying this because you're sitting here, because I don't play that game, but you weren't a good manager. You were the best I ever dealt with.
Oh my goodness.
And I say that with all sincerity. I mean, and my thought process is that Nelson left me alone. But the truth of the matter is, he didn't really. He just knew how to talk and I can't say about the other talent because I was never in the room, but he knew how to push the buttons, and he got me to do what he wanted to do, I think, most of the time, but not by telling me really what to do. And
Well,
there's a talent to that.
I used to, people would say, oh, does Bob really come in your office every day at, 10 minutes before the show? I said, yeah, he does. And, what if I wasn't in a meeting or
Yeah.
really had almost virtually anything else to do? I was in the office. But if he didn't leave my office either laughing, mad at me, or in some other way kind of emotionally stirred up, then, I think that was an impetus for him to go on the air and be be who he is. Is that fair,
Well,
Bob?
yeah, I think there's some truth in that. I certainly wasn't aware of it at the
Yeah, I
time,
know.
but looking back, I think there's some truth in that. I'm in the I think and John knows, but I think some of the audience knows I'm in the middle of a move. Well, I'm not in the middle of it. I'm preparing for the move. The move happens next week. And so cleaning all this crap out of this place has been an ordeal. But earlier today, I was digging through one of the drawers in my office, and I found crap that I totally, like 10, 15, 20-year-old stuff. I have no idea why I kept it, but I did. And now my recycle bin and my garbage bin are both full. So City of Toronto needs to help me and empty all this stuff as soon as possible, because I got lots more crap to put in there.
I'm sure they're on their way even as we speak.
But I found an article in for the camera in the
Sure,
Globe and
their
Mail.
way. I'm sure they're on their way.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. I'll call Tori if they're not. It's from the Globe and Mail. So, oh, Jesus.
You're good at this. You're good at
Globe
this.
Sports.
Camera left.
July 4th, 2015. Article about the show and me, written by Dave Schultz, who at that time was a friend of mine and later became an enemy for reasons that I can't explain, but he wrote a bunch of crap about me. I don't know why he got mad at me, but he did. And
Well, we never did pay him when he was on the air, so that's probably.
well, he actually says in the article that he did get paid.
Oh, okay.
He
Sure
actually
he
says that's interesting.
Yeah,
you bring that up.
we may have had that deal at one time or another.
Well, whatever.
Regardless.
The only thing that pisses me off is that's less money that I could get, but nonetheless.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that much.
Yeah.
I survived without it.
I think you were making about $50 a show, something like that.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, overpaid.
Something like that. But it references the beginnings of the show. And I want to take you back a little bit to that. Not the beginnings of the show. Well, essentially the beginnings of the show were simultaneous with the beginnings of sports radio. Pretty much.
I remember I was programming a station in London, CJBK,
Mm-hmm.
and that would have been 1989.
Yep.
And my bud Alan Davis and Paul Williams, who were overseeing the telemedia radio network at the time. When I got to London, I decided we should get Blue Jays baseball and Leafs hockey as part of our evening programming. It was an AM station, and still is. And Alan and Paul came out, and Leslie Nelson did a pitch for this show, Primetime Sports. So I think it had already been on the air in Toronto for a year, maybe. And then it got
88, summer of 88.
So I think we probably started taking the show in late 89, maybe early 1990. And that was, really the beginnings of the network. And I remember them saying to me, you guys, this station is the last one we need for the network. And it turns out we were the first one for the network. So they outright lied, but I took the show anyway, because I had a bit of a vision for what that station was going to be. So that's the beginning, kind of my first exposure.
So then you ultimately come in, but not as program director of the Fan. What was your original role?
I came in as program director of the network in March of 92. First day on the job, I flew to spring training.
Nice.
I've died and gone to heaven. I'm never giving this job up. And Alan went from the network down to the radio station because they were separate entities. At that time, it was still CJCL and playing various pieces of music that were allegedly hits. And he started the transition to the fan at the time, and I stayed at the network and programmed, essentially oversaw primetime sports, Blue Jays baseball, Leafs hockey, a number of other projects.
Do you remember how many stations were on the network back in the, like at its peak? Like how many stations across the country would have carried Blue Jays baseball, Maple Leaf hockey?
There were, I think we hit 55 stations across the country carrying baseball. The Leafs were a regional network. We couldn't go outside of Ontario.
Mhm.
We still had, I want to say 35 stations. You know, it was a bunch of mom and pops and smaller markets, but they were all part of the network. Primetime sports, I think at its peak was
25.
25. Yeah, I was going to say somewhere between 25 and 30.
Including Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. And then Bob could
Yes.
then say across the country in the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I always remember that.
But we had stations, John, as Nelson will attest, that did have significant reach into the US.
Oh,
We had a
yeah.
whole bunch of border stations. I think the Big
Windsor.
Big Eight
Yeah,
in
the Big
Windsor,
Yeah,
CKLW.
yeah,
carried the show.
and we were on in Niagara.
Yeah.
We had programming on in Niagara. The Vancouver, we never, because of the time zones. Ultimately, we did get the 6 to 7 hour primetime sports on out west, but they tape delayed it, which
Yeah.
was a little awkward because, you know, at that time we were doing shows, you know, pre-game shows, and by the time, or pre-game discussions, and by the time they aired out west, of course, the game
Game was on.
It was on.
Yeah. Or maybe even over.
And we kept that, you know, the network was strong for a long time. I mean, the strike and lockout in '94 certainly changed things for not just the network, but for the station. But by that time, we'd combined the radio station and the network. The network was a whole separate entity, whole separate business.
So correct me if I'm wrong. We went
I will.
through strike/lockouts in baseball and hockey. I don't know if it was the same time or literally back to back,
It
wasn't
was
it?
back to back. Baseball
we-
was out and hockey didn't start.
Yeah,
That's
we
right.
went like a year, almost a year, or more than a year. I don't
Yeah, it
remember
was
exactly.
it was pretty close to that. It was, you know,
With your two biggest sports and your two biggest play-by-play properties, because we carried both of those things.
Mhm.
So your evening programming was messed up, and your points of discussion were very limited because there was nothing going on.
Well, except that you ended up becoming labor lawyers every day.
Well, true.
Now, Nelson, if you were to start not suggesting there isn't going to be one starting up soon, but if you were to start an all sports radio station, how important is having play by play?
well, honestly, I'm not sure it started an all sports radio station at this point.
Well, that's a
but
topic. We're going to have that
that's
topic a little later.
a separate discussion.
But
You know, at the end of the day, the play-by-play is what you build your team with. That brings your customers into the store. And then the objective is to convert those listeners to come back the next morning. I mean, it's not, you know, rocket surgery, as they say. So the play-by-play gives you a conversion rate, and hopefully you build audience from there. The one thing I will say is that year we didn't have sports is when we became a really good talk radio station. You know, because if the guys couldn't, if guys all at that time couldn't go on the air and be great communicators, we were going to die a slow, painful death. So
I know the interesting thing about play-by-play, just to interject, we talked about this often. The radio station, principally AM radio, talk radio, is a car vehicle.
yes, it is.
You'll get some people who will listen to it in their homes, but essentially you're getting them when they're going to work and when they're going home, and in the day, if they're in their car for some reason, you might get them there. But the radio station, when they turn the car off in the driveway at night, if your radio station is on, it's still going to be on the next morning. And that, I think, is what Nelson is sort of referring to. So the more audience you can give them in the evening when they park their car for the last time, the greater chance you can build your momentum the next day. And hopefully they just leave it there. Right.
And you build promotional elements into the game, so that again drives tuning hopefully to the next day.
I'm not sure you answered my question though.
What was the question?
If you
play-by-play is important but with rights fees what they are now, with the expenses up until the pandemic, when everybody's kind of sitting in their living room doing stuff, I don't know how you financially make that work anymore. With all of the fragmentation, and honestly, nobody goes in the house and turns on the radio unless there's a very, very specific reason. And in the 90s, Bob, when we launched the station, keep in mind there were only 81 games Blue Jays games on TV.
Yeah. And
every year Paul Beeston would say, I want 162 on TV. And I'd say, Paul, all you're really doing there, not that radio's the medium, is devaluing what their radio property is worth. Play-by-play on the radio is a service for people who can't be in front of the TV.
Sure. Well,
so John, to answer the question, from a potential audience perspective, play-by-play is important.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, it's a bit of a different.
Because if you look at the latest group of cuts, and they were the Bell Media cuts, where they literally removed 3 all sports radio stations, for all intents and purposes. They were the stations in Winnipeg, Hamilton, Vancouver that didn't have hockey play-by-play.
That's right.
And the ones that did have hockey play-by-play, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, stayed. And yet I would tell you that for instance, the programming in Vancouver, and I like the guys in Vancouver, and a lot of them have gone on to some pretty good success on alternate mediums. They had really good programming, and yet it didn't survive without that hockey play-by-play.
Yeah, I suspect the reason the station folded had nothing to do with whether they had hockey play-by-play. Frankly, the Fan was a better radio station, a more successful radio station without play-by-play. Right. And honestly, when the Leaf rights went from the Fan over to, at the time, I want to say Mojo, but it was AM 640 anyways. 3 years after that, the perception was the Fan still had the rights. Why? Because we continued to hammer that position.
Right.
And we were
home of the Leaf Fan.
We were home of the Leaf Fan.
Yeah.
We were Toronto sports radio. We did all those things right at the time. And frankly, the station thrived because we also didn't have, millions of dollars in expenses related to play-by-play.
And from an editorial perspective, did it free you up?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, at the time we weren't really that, even when we had the rights.
No, I know. Well, Bob certainly.
I don't think, Bob, I didn't want people to go on the air and lie. I don't think we kowtowed. I don't think we ever had the discussion. You can't say this about the Blue Jays, or you can't say that about the Leafs, because the audience would know, and our first responsibility was to the audience.
So I got a couple of things that I actually don't know the answer to. The Rogers owned the Toronto Blue Jays. Rogers owned a piece of MLSE. In the case of the Blue Jays, how did the rights fee payment work? Do you have any idea? Was that a left pocket, right pocket deal?
Yes and no. I mean, there are 2 separate budget lines, so each business had to operate independently. There was we needed to have what they call an arm's length agreement. Rogers couldn't undervalue the rights because all of that money went into revenue share.
Mhm.
So, there was a company that MLB used that essentially valued what the rights should be. So no, I mean, did it go from left pocket to right pocket? Sure, under the guise of Rogers Incorporated, but it was two separate budget lines, budget items.
And as far as the fan and MLSE, it was always viewed as a separate company, so the deals had to be done completely independently.
Well, not to mention that with MLSE, you've got two owners that both own media outlets, so there had to be some proper distribution of dollars and rights.
Yeah, that's right. But even before that, when Nelson and I actually did a deal. We did a contract to carry for the fan to carry Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
In I think 2000 and I was going to say 2003 or 2004.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and it was.
Was that the deal that I got all those seat backs?
Yeah, you did that. Yeah, you got seat backs.
That was pretty good.
You liked that deal, huh?
Love that deal.
Yeah, I know. I had certain equity to deal with. I was given a pot full of a list of things that I could sell you. It wouldn't cost us anything, and it saves some money.
Perceived value, yeah.
Perceived value, well, sure. And it was great perceived value for the radio station.
And at the time, the Raptors weren't, they were starting to be a team, but they'd had their challenges, and they were on CFRB for a few years, and so when we got the rights, it was okay. Well, how much are you going to pay us to carry the games?
We actually have sponsors on this program. We have to take a break.
Oh, good. So I can invoice you for the time?
No,
excellent.
No, you can't. Well, you can invoice. Yeah, it will get lost. Back with Nelson Millman after these messages. We're with our pal Nelson Millman, the program director, former program director of the Fan.
I was also the general manager and the vice president, and shoes repaired while you wait.
Who gives a shit,
I used to.
Were you around for the? You'll forgive me because I can't remember the time frame. In my mind, when I was there, you were always there. But for the commencement of the Unholy Alliance, the merger of Bell and Rogers in MLSE?
Yes, but I think it was right at the tail end. I don't remember what year they did that. Would have been, well, the Unholy Alliance started with the Olympics.
2010.
The Vancouver Olympics in 2010.
Yeah.
But I don't know, John, you might know when
wow.
When that deal came together. It may have been after that. It may have been.
It was after that because
could Google it,
that was more of a right share kind of thing. And that was sort of Pelly's initiative, I think, to try and find a home for everything.
I think I think MLSE was put together before 2010.
I bet we could find out.
Well, we should know, but three dum-dums, but
there's 180 years sitting here at least. So
but here's where I want to get to. That was sort of the precursor of it. There came a time, and I don't remember exactly when it was also decided that Maple Leaf hockey and Raptors basketball would be split between the Fan and TSN radio.
I believe I had already left. So I left.
When you said you left, you actually walked down the hall to go to television, right?
Yeah. Across the bridge.
All right. So I won't ask you. I'll ask, would you have done that deal? That deal never made any sense to me.
Splitting the rights and splitting the games? No, God, it drove me crazy. I did come back for a short period of time in between other program directors that you got rid of. I remember having to go through with my pal Jeff McDonald at TSN, who's getting what game and how do you split them up? And because we also, with Leafs and Raptors, we also had the Blue Jays mixed in there in the fall and in the spring. So it was quite a dance, but it drove me crazy. I just, you have to own something, and you can't own half of something.
I'll tell you, I don't know about you, Shannon, but that one was the most, there have been a lot of puzzling things that I've seen in the broadcast industry over the years, but that one made absolutely no sense to me. It doesn't work for the audience. It doesn't work for the station. You got two radio stations calling it the voice of the Leafs and the voice of the Raptors simultaneously, and they're competitive radio stations. To even to give a couple of games, a few games here and there. And Nelson, we went through this a lot where we had conflicts.
Yeah, and I did deals with AM 640. I did deals with CJZ. I did deals with whoever I could.
680
move
carried
some of
some
the
games
games.
occasionally, didn't they?
So who's that?
680?
680 did not carry games while I was there.
Oh, I think they wound up carrying a few at some point in time. I'm quite certain.
Maybe in 2015, I think when the Jays went to the playoffs.
Maybe.
Maybe then, but when I was there, 680 was just the pure news wheel, and we're not breaking that up.
Yeah. In any event, I'm intrigued. I will continue to be intrigued by the genesis of that deal, who did it and why they did it.
Well, the deal was done at the top level. I
Sure
mean, it had nothing to do with whoever the program director was. That wasn't going to be his call, and that was one that came down from the ivory tower.
That was George Cope and Nadir Mohammed cutting a deal that said,
Yeah.
you get 50% of the content, we get 50% of the content.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You talk about how it doesn't work for radio. It has always been that way on television. You know, for at least in our country, where that there has always been two packages of games, one on one channel and one on the other.
Because TV channels aren't habitual, radio channels are
Yeah.
habitual.
Yeah, I suspect that's why.
You know, it's as simple as that. People don't tune to television for the station; they tune for the show. Whereas radio, you're tuning into the station for the most part. There's obviously people in and out for specific shows, but it's just a different philosophy in terms of attracting and holding audience.
That leads me to ask the question: what was the biggest difference between running radio and you went on to be a senior manager at Sportsnet for a while? What was the biggest difference?
A spectacularly unsuccessul and short television career.
No, I don't
the biggest
think so.
difference was just the workflow, how you get things done. And you know, on the radio station, if I wanted something on the air, I could have it on the air the next day. Television, I was hoping for September. You know the process to create a television show, and you know, my background was all radio, so I had to deal with some personal frustration in terms of workflow. How do we get from point A to point B to point C? What do you mean I have to start planning a show 4 months, 6 months in advance? And then, you know, finding the budget for it, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you believe that still? Do you believe that I mean, that's a level of bureaucracy that I think a lot of people, their eyes would roll. Do you believe that's still the case in television?
You know, I have no idea. I mean, I think you mean in terms of getting from point A to point B, or?
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, TV it's easier now given technology.
Right.
You know, 5 years ago, did we think that Dan Shulman would be sitting in his living room or wherever he is doing Olympic basketball and Blue Jays baseball? No,
Right.
Never occurred to anybody to do that for television. You know, radio for years has been, you know, people have been in way different much different markets than where their show might be. So yeah, I think so. I mean, and are they creating new programming? And again, that's the difference between, you know, TV and radio. You have to keep the radio content fresh. You reprogram it every day. Television, you spend 3-4 months building a show, putting it together, creating however many episodes or a daily show, and it's just a much different, as I said, much different workflow.
Turn the clock back a little bit, just for reference. Our technical director, Hugh, informs me that the unholy alliance between Rogers and Bell happened in 2012.
Okay.
Wow.
Just to put it in context.
Thank you, Hugh. I taught him well, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Yes, and Nelson was his instructor at the Crummy Broadcast School.
No, the College of Sports Media.
Yeah, whatever it's called. That Nelson worked at. Are you still working there? Do you still do stuff there?
No, you know what? I live up here.
They fire you there too?
No, they didn't. Well, yeah, no. I got fired once in my life.
No.
Once in a 45-year career, I got fired once.
Well, get in line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Now, I may have quit just ahead of that in a couple of places. But you can't fire me. I quit.
Shannon, is that the joint you're working on?
Yeah, I do there. I work there too.
All right.
Yeah. Every
Give 'em
once
a
in
good
a while.
plug. They're a good college.
Yeah, they've put out a few quality people that are on the air across the country.
Bunch of them doing Olympics.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
Mhm.
So
Anyway.
one of the things we wanted to talk about, which we haven't discussed at all, and I don't know how much we'll start this conversation and maybe finish it at another time, but
Somebody else cancels?
when you fill in again, that's right. Yes.
the future of sports radio, I don't think it's really in jeopardy, although it's not what it was 5 years ago, and certainly not what it was 10 years ago. And it isn't because I don't think it's because people have gotten bored with it. But things have changed. I mean, technology has changed. Shows like this that I didn't know anything about a year ago until I started doing it have changed people's habits to a great extent. There are more people listening to podcasts now than ever before. There's more money being generated by podcasts than ever before. It's a program that you can do remotely, as we are doing here. 3 guys sitting in their own houses at the same time, talking to each other, looking at each other. And the face-to-face aspect of it is not insignificant. I always said I'd rather have people in studio when we were doing the radio TV show than have them on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Skype a few times, and that was a technological nightmare, but it was the beginning of what we have now, Zoom and the other services like we had. Where is this going? Where is sports radio going, in your opinion?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Skype thing, because when I was at Sportsnet, I was jumping up and down trying to convince people that we could bring people on from anywhere via Skype.
Right.
And towards the end of my tenure there, we started to dabble in it. Listen, I think, and I've said this all along, when people ask me the question, I think it's going to have to find what its level is inside all the fragmentation. You said it's not what it was 5 years ago, Bob. It's not what it was 2 years ago.
Well, okay.
And that comes down to how people are consuming media these days more than anything else. Not to mention that an in-car format doesn't work if people weren't in their cars. Now it's starting to come back. I have no idea what ratings look like for radio. I think they have the same challenges in the US, but it may be a little easier down there because sports is so life and death to, excuse the expression these days, to people in the US. Canada sports is a pastime. We're down there, they live and die for it. But I think, it will survive. It may not be, certainly what it was. It may not have the star power that it used to have. And as long as, people are in their cars, I think that hyper local feel to what's being done on the radio should keep that audience there. I want to hear nothing except the Leafs. I want to hear nothing except the Jays. And as the Jays get closer to the playoffs or the Leafs, you can't read enough, see enough, or hear enough. So radio will still be, in that pecking order. But you're right. Lots of people, the guys that left the Vancouver station, excuse me, have created an online radio station, basically.
Yeah.
They're live. They take calls. They've got it figured out. Everybody can be their own radio station now. So, as any business has to evolve and evaluate what's working, what isn't working, radio's doing the same thing. But nobody knows where it's going to go yet. I certainly don't.
Well,
Did that answer the question? No.
well, you answered the question by saying you don't know, and that's a fair answer
Yeah.
because I sure don't.
But the appetite of the sports fan has not diminished, has it?
No.
So what is diminished
fragmentation.
is that you have so many different ways to listen to what you want to listen to
When you want to listen to it,
when you want to listen to it.
or when you want to watch it.
Yeah.
So that's all part of, how all of these platforms are evolving. I think if you're looking for interaction, you go to radio. If you're looking for one-way communication, you go to podcasts.
So
Well,
if you
it's
were doing an all sports radio station, you'd take a lot more calls,
I think I would. I mean, we were called the Fan for a reason.
but you didn't take many phone calls in your time.
Yeah, you know what? We evolved, but we created specific times because as time wore on, the call out was, when I say call it, getting guests on was a big part of what we did. People always said the weakest part of sports radio is the calling. Well, not if you have a great host. Frankly, the weakest part of Bob's show every day was not 4 to 5. I don't mean the word.
Well, at the end, the last couple of years, I only did calls on Fridays.
Right.
Like people forget.
But that was as much by choice as anything else. There
It was totally by
probably
choice.
no research or reason beyond Bob's taking 50,000 phone calls. He doesn't want to do that no more.
Well, that was essentially it. And, I had this phrase I used to use all the time. In fact, I was on with Humble and Fred on their podcast about a week or two ago, and Humble threw it out at me because he remembered that I'd said it on air. And that was, if the callers were any good, they'd have their own show.
Exactly.
And,
But what it did is it stimulated discussion. And,
yeah.
especially with you, you didn't have many discussions with people. There were a few guys, the regulars that came on that you'd have conversations with.
Well,
But yeah,
no, I didn't have conversations hardly with anybody.
Yeah.
They would ask a question, then I'd say whatever I wanted to say, whether
With
it
most
answered the
people.
question or
with
not.
most people, but
Yeah.
occasionally you did, and to say you didn't would be a lot. So
By
we
the way,
did.
those sports conversations and all of those conversations on any radio station now have just migrated to social media. That's all
100%. That's
migrated
exactly
to people can sit in their basements, or as Jay Feaster, the general manager of the Calgary Flames at the time, said, listen, there's a 13-year-old in his underwear in his basement creating rumors about my team. And so you can be comfortable in who you are, what you are, where you are, and have that conversation, that argument, that dissertation on social media anytime you want.
But the calls were always nothing more than a platform for the host. No matter which host it was, the call comes in. Should we trade John Allward for Joe DiMaggio? Should we make that trade? And then the host would take it from there. And I think I told this-
DiMaggio was 86 at the time, and he couldn't
Didn't
hit his
matter.
ball.
Didn't matter.
Right.
There was still a discussion. I tell people this all the time, and I may get the names wrong. Bob was taking calls one day, and I keep saying it was Peter Forsberg who was going to get traded to Nashville or whatever it was. And a guy called, somebody called and said, yeah, Bob, blah, blah, blah. If they make that trade, who at Nashville do you think winds up on the outside? And I'm thinking, God bless Bob, but my guess is he hasn't memorized the roster for the Nashville Predators. But Bob did what great talk show hosts do. He took that and he started talking about how coaches make decisions about who should play or who shouldn't play, and did 10 minutes without ever once mentioning the call or the Nashville Predators for that matter.
There you go. Yeah.
And that's what calls do. They stimulate. They're there to illuminate the host's opinion.
All right. I want to wrap this up, but I tell you what I want to do. And this speaks to you making another appearance on this program
Oh my God.
Jeez.
at some point in time. I feel like there are, and I'm sure there are, and John, you will remember this, and I know Nelson will, periodically Not that often, but periodically I'd bring Nelson in and open the phone
Sure,
lines up.
sure.
And they were always jammed. People wanted to talk to the guy who was essentially, they thought, making the decisions.
The idiot
Was it
program
me?
director.
It wasn't me personally.
It was
They
the
didn't-
idiot program
We
director.
all know better.
Yeah, okay.
Don't try and scam these people. They're too smart for you. But now we've carried on a 45-minute or whatever it is conversation here, which is intriguing to us. But my guess is that our audience has questions about sports radio, things that Nelson has gone through, things that they remember that happened, their thoughts about the future that they would like to know answers to. So what I'd like to do is we're going to figure out a way that people can send us questions, and we'll have you back in at some point in the not too distant future to answer those questions. Would you do that?
Sure. Yeah,
There's
of
an
course.
easy way to do that on your Twitter account, Bob. Just send out. We're going to have Nelson Millman on hashtag Ask Nelson.
I was going to give out his home phone number. I thought that might be.
Go ahead. I had it
To go.
disconnected. It's already been disconnected.
I also know your cell.
I don't give a crap about that.
Yes, sure.
You do that.
Okay, I'll do it on my Twitter, but you got to do it on yours too, Shannon, with all of your followers. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have 206 followers. There's no point in my doing it.
I didn't
Actually,
ask you
I just I deleted it. It's 205.
And I
Well, there
ain't one
goes
of
my
them.
chance of the blue check mark.
You know how many people I follow on Twitter?
You follow one now, and I think it's yourself. No, you follow one.
You followed Obama for a while. I don't know if you're still doing that.
Well, Obama followed me, and I
Oh,
thought
right.
Obama didn't follow you. Give me a break.
100%.
Give me a
100%.
break.
Now he followed 640,000 people, but he
Oh,
followed me.
Please.
No, but he followed
Please.
you specifically.
He
Never
did.
mind those other 639,000.
That's right.
I am following
Oh, my
one. Oh, I'm
God.
following myself.
That's right. You're following your the
My
pod
podcast.
clips.
I'm
Because
gonna-
you don't know when you
I'm gonna
tweet.
delete that right away.
Oh,
If I can,
okay.
only if I
We
can
got-
figure out how.
We got to go because we got to get ready for the questions.
All right. So
All right.
people can check Twitter, check John's site or my site, and questions for Nelson. And as soon as we accumulate enough, like 3, we'll have you back.
3.
I
You
can't
think
imagine
we can
we'll
make
get more
that a
than but-
trending hashtag? I
I'm
don't even
gonna,
know what that means.
I'm gonna have my wife make up 2 questions to get to 3.
You
My
know, the
wife
stu-
doesn't have 3 questions for me.
I'll tell you how hard it is to assimilate what we are actually doing here. I was inclined to just go to my Twitter account and see how many questions we had already, but nobody's seen this episode yet. We pre-recorded.
Well, that's because you think it's Thursday.
What a maroon!
What? You know what? You are a maroon.
I am
That's
a
funny.
maroon.
That is funny.
All right, get lost. How's
Thanks
your
for
golf
nothing.
game?
my goodness
You know, it's solid
gracious.
112 today. Sound
Attaboy.
good.
I don't know. You were a pretty good putter on Monday.
Yeah, that was fun. That was
Oh, another
Scott-
golf date I didn't get invited to.
You know what? It was Scott Morrison's tournament that he's had for the past 13 years in memory of his
Fantastic.
late wife
Okay. Yeah, right.
and the lovely
Nelson,
okay.
Nelson and I had a great deal of fun together
I
with Sam.
with Sam.
Who
Sam's a big
still hasn't
Bob,
stopped talking.
and Sam's a huge Bob fan.
He is a huge Bob fan.
when did you play Monday?
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised you're finished already. It's only 3 days later between you two choppers. I would imagine it would have taken you
Oh,
several
you know.
nights.
Yeah,
You're
that's-
not wrong, but that's not nice.
It's not.
All right, that's enough. We'll insult each other more later.
Goodbye.
Love you, Nelson. Goodbye.
See you, boys.
The former program director of the Fan, among other things, Nelson Millman, back after these messages. We're back, and our thanks to Nelson Millman for pinch
Okay.
hitting for
Do you
us.
know how to use hashtags?
Not really.
Okay, so well,
Well, I put the hashtag and then something like Ask Nelson, right?
yeah. When you tweet out this edition of the podcast,
Yeah.
just say we're going to have Nelson on again. So if you have a question that Nelson may enjoy or you may want an answer to, attach the question with the hashtag Ask Nelson.
And what does the hashtag do?
Well, then all we have to do is all we do is go search the hashtag, and
Oh.
all the questions will come up.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, very easy.
Or
I'm
easier.
trying to make it easier for you.
Well, you'll have to work at that because
I don't know. For
I'm
some
dumb as
reason,
a post.
your nickname, the Bobcat, is much easier than the king of social media.
Well, I would never be considered the king of social media.
Okay.
I can assure
Anyway.
you of that.
Hashtag Ask Nelson.
All right, that's what we're going to do. So if you got a question for Nelly or about sports radio or about the fan or, anything else you can think of.
Yeah. Not about his golf game, though.
Yeah. And it'll be good because it'll be the audience asking the questions, not a couple of insiders like you and I who've known this guy for 30 years or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Off we go. Go Blue Jays. They won 13 out of 17 and have gained hardly any ground.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. Only on the Boston Red Sox. But see what Red Sox did last night? They hung up 20 on the Tampa Bays.
It's the American League East and the American League Wild Card are crazy. They're crazy.
It looks like it's going to be an interesting September.
As Dave Perkins told us one day, it's going to go down to the last series. I think the last series in Toronto, I think it's the Yankees.
I think it is. I was just going to say.
Yeah.
We shall see. Every night's an interesting night. Thank you all for listening, watching, and come back again tomorrow. We'll have something for you. God knows what. Might be good. Might not be. You get paid the same either way. For John Shannon, Bob McCown.